And good evening, and welcome to the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO. I am Chad Holmes, joined by Jeff Gress, and I'm going to tell you right away, I'm just back from Green Bay. I did hockey this afternoon. You're going to carry the whole show tonight.
That's a lot of...
It's going to be Jeff Gress talking about everything for the next 2 hours.
That's a lot of pressure. They want to hear your... sponsors pay to hear your voice, so you got to carry that in.
Coming up, we have a couple of guests we flipped it this time around. Coming up in about 20 minutes or so, at about 6:20, I had a conversation in the past week with Brady Cleveland. He would be a senior this year at Wausau West. He would be one of these kids that we'd have coming in as our student-athlete guest. But he played as a freshman and a sophomore at Wausau West, and then the United States National Developmental Squad brought him on board. He's been playing for that team for the last 2 years. He has traveled around the world playing hockey. He is going to be playing at the University of Wisconsin for the Badgers starting next fall. And I had a chance to sit down with Brady Cleveland and talk about leaving high school, going to play for this national developmental team, and, of course, getting set to go to Madison and try and help the Wisconsin Badgers return to ice hockey glory. So we'll talk to Brady Cleveland coming up at about 6:20. And then we will talk to a guy that Jeff Gress knows very well. Battled him for many years on the sidelines in the Merriwood Conference South from the Stratford Tigers, Curt Schmidt. And I know that you have great respect for all these guys in the Merriwood South, but it seems like every time I hear you talk about Curt Schmidt, great respect for what he's been able to accomplish at Stratford.
Well, yeah, Coach Schmidt, I just think he's one of those, as a lot of coaches do, but him in general, gets a lot out of his guys. He gets them to buy into the systems he believes makes them winners and makes them successful, and they just seem to always go a little extra farther than they should and do a little bit better. And he's always has the they had the great teams that. They had the COVID year with those great teams. That's just a tough one.
You talk about one of the biggest disappointments that did not involve a loss. That was it. Because the opportunity was lost. Where one of the great teams, and as a coach, you know that you go through a long time. Once in a while, you'll get a special team if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And that was a special team.
And he coached them really well. And I always feel sorry. But to get back to your general statement is a great deal of respect for the guy. He's a great coach. He works his kids well on both ends of the floor, offensively and defensively, and gets the most out of them. And for that reason, he's successful in the Merriwood Conference for Stratford High School.
Let's talk about boys high school basketball. Normally in this segment, we talk a lot about what's happened in the past week. And really, there's not been a lot until the last day or two, because last Thursday, again, we had another week of postponements. And then it led into Christmas weekend, so there was not a lot of action scheduled anyways on Friday nights. So really, since we last were together last Wednesday, last week in terms of any conference games, they were wiped away due to the weather. So now a lot of holiday tournaments going on. And for Wisconsin Valley Conference schools, DC Everest and Wausau West played in events on each side of the state the last couple of days. Yesterday, DC Everest over in the eastern part of the state faced off against a really good squad. Appleton East and the Evergreens fell 72-65. Did not get any numbers on it. But bottom line is DC Everest testing themselves. And as a coach, I imagine that this time of year to be able to play a team like Appleton East over there, it was, I think, the Sundrop Classic over at Crest. If that's I
was going to put my plug in for the greatest pop distillery. And have you ever been to Twigs over there?
I have not.
In Shawano on the way to Green Bay.
But I'll tell you one thing is
Sundrop in a bottle. Very good.
One thing that from time to time my fall co-host Paul Novinsky would bring me a Sundrop. Just a hint,
I was going out to get one to bring it in honor of the Crest Center Sundrop Showcase, but haven't had time.
And then today, DC Everest faced Green Bay Southwest, another solid team, and the Evergreens bounced back really nicely, 69-47. But the big picture, again, for DC Everest, right now a game behind Marshfield in the Wisconsin Valley Conference, to be able to be tested. And again, as a coach, as an athletic director, they know what they have. And DC Everest coming into the season knew they had a team that had the potential to be really good in the Valley and also hopefully be able to be really good as you head into the postseason playoffs, and to face off with teams like Appleton East yesterday. Even if you lose, you take something away from it.
Well, I think it's a big deal. I know as we looked out, and why we're out of breath racing around to see what's going on with the games and getting updates, because there's just so much, like you said, that didn't happen due to the weather, and so much that does happen now with some of these tournaments starting up from Tuesday through Friday, is to get out and test yourself and play. I just think for the students' sake, at Christmas break, they practice a little bit and they want to get out and go play people. And it's a big deal to challenge yourself in different areas of the state. And I think Everest, behind the leadership that they have in their players and their guys that are skilled and guys that carry them, they need to have challenges, and going and playing in Appleton East yesterday and even coming up short. I think that's a good thing to try and do something outside the state. You got Marcus Hall. Go to different ends and let him lead your team, and the other guys fill in and hold their roles. And I think that makes them stronger, and you get to test yourself out of conference play, and they bounce back. And sometimes that's tough to do too. You go play a hard-fought game against a good basketball team, and you like to see your team show up and be definitive in how they're going to play the next day. And so I think 2 good games for DC Everest over there in the Crest Center.
Also, Wausau West, they headed west. They played in Menominee the last 2 days, and a couple of tough losses for the Warriors, especially yesterday. I was watching the stream of this one. They had the game well in hand against Menominee, but in the end, a 13-0 run to end the game. The Warriors fell 49-44. And Griffin Lang had 13 points, but West put themselves in a position to win, not able to close it out. Again, a chance late, tight game against River Falls early today. And in the end, the Warriors fell 59-46. Right now, the Warriors, I think, 2-7 overall. A bit of a struggle right now. And it looked like, just watching it, they had a lot of good looks in the game yesterday. I did not have a chance to watch today's game with the hockey going on. But watching them yesterday, they had shots I think that Coach Lemons would be very confident that some of their guys would hit. It just looked like a little lack of confidence right now. And I think being at 2-7, having a bit of a struggle right now, confidence can be a big factor, can it?
Oh, definitely. That you can ride that in a lot of different ways. If you don't have the confidence, you're not winning the games you probably should. And if you do have the confidence, you're fighting through the difficult moments with good intentions of how you're going to play, and thoughts and actions and carrying everything out. And I think, for West, it's a little bit challenging. You don't want to roll and hit like a buzzkill in what you want to brood. They've struggled a little bit up until this point. I actually saw the second game over there at Menominee against River Falls, and again, they got some good looks, like you said, from a coaching standpoint. Some inside interior looks. They got to the free throw line, and when they do that, they were able to knock down their free throws. When they had some open threes, I saw a couple of their players bury those, but not sometimes in the moments that you needed that big shot, or you need that shot to follow through. When you they got down by 5, they creep back in it, knock it down by 1. You got to come down and get that next basket, and they weren't able to do that. So I think they're going to be tested a little bit right away here when they jump back into their conference schedule, because as a coach and a player in a program, you want to get things rolling right away, because you're on borrowed time before you know it. I think I saw a stat, somebody said 9 weeks till March, and it's kind of scary when you put it in the single digits, and it might be less now even, 8 weeks, whatever it is.
And you mentioned, again, West had a postponement against Rapids before Christmas, and now they're making it up on Tuesday of next week. When you look at that game at home, especially when you see coming into the field house next Friday night, DC Everest, it does put a lot of significance. We talked about it early on before the conference season began. You had Marshfield and DC Everest right now looking at as the favorites, and then you had everybody else. You felt like you could beat everybody else. Wausau West lost to Merrill on their home court to begin the conference season. That's a big win for Merrill, but that's also a big loss for Wausau West. Now you got another home game with Wisconsin Rapids. You don't want to be losing these games against those other teams in that grouping at home when you have to go on the road later in the season.
Well, yeah, because it's going to rise you up closer to the top teams that you eventually want to sneak up on if you're not in that area right away in your conference. Rapids, Jungworth and Matthews are averaging double digits, so they're getting who's going to put the ball in the basket for them. Their names are showing up in the box scores all the time, and I think West is looking for that consistency as much as Nelson averages about 16 a game. I think sometimes they have different guys that show up in that box score, and to find that consistency in that conference play is going to be a big deal. So I don't know. You don't say must win, but you want it. You want it because right now I'm sure knowing the competitor that Coach Lemons is and what he expects out of his guys. There's things that they're going to want to do really well right away out of the gates and want to keep progressing at so that they can continue to be competitive and inch up into the middle of the pack of that conference.
Speaking of the team that has been as impressive as anybody in the conference so far this season in the WVC on the boys' side, Marshfield, and they whipped up on Janesville Parker today, 66-46. That was at the basketball yearbook thing, right?
Yes.
Yes, it was.
WBY shootout.
So that's obviously, usually those are pretty good teams they bring down there. I'm not familiar with what Parker has been doing so far this year, but at the same time, you look at Marshfield and what they do. They have a good balance. Today, Owen Hansen had 18 points, but he was one of 4 players in double figures. When you have 4 players in double figures, like Marshfield does, it just makes for a very difficult task for their opponents.
Right, and I haven't seen Marshfield play, but when I've talked to a coach or a fan or a spectator or a parent that has watched them play so far, their biggest thing they always talk about is how, they got about 7 guys, all about 6'1". They can all shoot a little bit. They're good slashers to the basket, and they're consistently, nobody's doing anything way out of the ordinary, but everybody does a lot of little good things. So it makes a big difference for that team to play consistently. That we talked about it. They took some lumps right away in their non-conference schedule, but I think it made them stronger, and they're sitting at 3-0. They've gotten some good conference wins, and to go down and get that 20-point win over Janesville Parker down in a different area of the state. And I've always found that is the biggest adjustment. For one thing to just chime in on is going to different area of the states. Basketball can be played differently. I remember we'd play in the central Wisconsin area. We'd go, to a Lacrosse Aquinas tournament. And then we'd struggle with the physicality, or the game was reffed a little bit differently. So some of those things made a big difference in how the game was played. So I think it's good that they went out and tested themselves against Janesville Parker, and they'll play Brookfield East tomorrow.
Absolutely. We'll talk about what's happening tomorrow, Friday, and then early next week, a little bit later in the program. Let's go to the Great Northern Conference. Today, Mosinee was playing over at Preble in their tournament, and they were impressive in their first round game. They advanced to the championship of that tournament tomorrow. They beat the Kingdom Prep Lutheran 85-42. Mosinee right now is just a handful, aren't they? I mean, they got guard play, they got bigs. They look like they have a pretty good recipe to be successful, not only during the course of the regular season, but even as we look forward to the postseason. Well,
yeah, again, non-conference game, playing during Christmas break. Sometimes, players are focused, maybe unfocused, depending on what's going on. But I went to a different area of the state, won by 40-some points. And I think for Mosinee, they have a very balanced attack. They have a couple guys that can hit 15, 20, 25 points on a given night. But I think the 2 times I've seen them play is they have balance in their role players. They have other guys that you kick it out to me, I'm going to try to drill that open shot for you. I'm going to make the extra pass to another guy so that he gets even a better look, even though I had an okay open look. This will give us an either better one. And they're feisty on defense. They don't want to be scored on. So I think that consistency makes for a good thing. And, we were talking off air. We can't wait till those top 3 teams in that conference they're going after each other, because I think there's going to be some wars.
And the thing about it is we're going to talk about, I think, the game of the week next week will involve 2 of the best in that league. Also today, Rhinelander beat Ashland 85-46. Truman Lamers had a career-high 26 points for the Hodags. Rhinelander's been, I think... they're always so solid, and they've had a little bit of trouble to start off the season.
Yeah, they're 2. They wanted that. They needed that win, I would say. They're 2-6. I saw them play against East, where they kept coming at. East always kept them 5-6 points at bay, but they never went away. So they got kids that fight hard, give Coach Lemons great effort, and play unselfishly for him, but just maybe not necessarily a huge skill set. So he's working with them on what he can to get them better. So I think for them, another confidence factor, another win over the Christmas break here versus Ashland is good to get that game in.
Merowith South, again, not a lot of action to talk about so far, but we talked last week about the Milwaukee Audubon Technology School, and Edgar last night fell to Milwaukee Audubon Technology 68-65. You found out some information, didn't you?
Not much. I just looked up and found their school website, but they're a school that the way there's technology skills and abilities that they kind of teach and do their curriculum to. So it was a school down in Milwaukee that's I don't know if it's a charter school or what type of school it exactly is, but it exists. And you would think, though, those teams would be a little bit, in just starting and developing, there wouldn't be a lot established there. So I'd be curious to talk to Coach Huss and see what they had to offer them in terms of competition, because Edgar plays very feisty, very competitively, well defensively, and they must have been a solid team to take down Edgar, and to score 72 points on Edgar, who usually plays strong defense.
And to think about real quickly before we, and actually today, Edgar, in fact, is on the court right now, taking on Milwaukee Pulaski. Tonight at the Quant for the Century Classic, Assumption faces Pacelli. And also Auburndale has their tournament going on, and they have Augusta at 7:30 tonight. But the thing about it I kind of noticed is I see that Edgar played yesterday, they play today, they play tomorrow, and then they play Monday as well on the 2nd, the day after New Year's. I mean, it's one thing to be busy, but this is almost ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a lot.
We talk about whether or not you want to be active during the holidays. You talk about being active. Edgar's being active.
Yeah, that's a lot of games. Again, I guess you got to judge the caliber of your team and what situations you want to put them in. I don't know. Sometimes you think you're going to tire players out and run them a little bit too much, but I don't know. They're high school kids. They bounce back. They look for their video games after a tough loss and are resilient in that sense. And so I go with and err on the side that Coach Huss knows his guys and knows what he wants to accomplish by getting these games in and playing them. And I think testing themselves down in a Port Washington tournament is a good idea.
We got to take a break. We're going to come back. We'll talk more about boys basketball. We'll talk about girls basketball. But coming up next, we'll have our student athlete guest for this week. Again, we usually have the coach first and then the student athlete. But tonight, we're going to have our coach, Curt Schmidt of Stratford, joining us at 7 o'clock. But coming up next, real interesting conversation with Brady Cleveland. Again, a young man who would be a senior at Wausau West this year, but got the opportunity to play for the United States National Development Team, get a chance to play all around the world the last couple of years, and now getting set as well to go on to play for the University of Wisconsin starting next fall on the ice. So we'll talk to Brady Cleveland coming up next here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio 98.9 and 1230. Welcome back to the program. And today, got a chance to speak to, I think, a very special guest, a guy that I saw a couple of years ago, and I was saying off the air, hard to believe he's only 17 years old because it seems like he's been around forever, accomplishing a lot of great things. Very happy to welcome former Wausau West High School hockey standout and now a member of the USA Hockey National Team Development Program, Brady Cleveland. Brady, thanks for popping on in.
Thanks for having me.
I imagine this time of year be able to come back here to Central Wisconsin after, you're living in Michigan, correct?
Yep.
And to come back here, it must be fun to see a lot of your old friends and guys you played with growing up, just to come back and get a little sense of the home front.
Yeah, for sure. Just being able to come back and see all my good buddies and stuff. I grew up with these guys, and just coming back and sharing my life with them and their life updates is always a great time.
Let's talk about, what's been going on because, as I said, National Team Development Program. For folks that may not be familiar with what it is the U.S. National Team Development Program?
So the U.S. National Program is basically a collection of the best kids from all over the country of the birth year, which I'm 05, so 05 birth years. And
by the way, that makes me feel very, very old.
Yeah, so it's the best collection of those players of that age group, and we just play together, train together every single day, and just grow as a team.
You played 2 years at Wausau West. When did the national team program, the development program, come into your radar? When did they reach out to you? How did that occur?
Yeah, so my sophomore year, I guess I was playing Team Wisconsin U15, and Paul Caulfield was one of my coaches, and he kind of sat me aside and told me that, yeah, you might have a chance to make this team, which I thought was pretty cool. And then they eventually reached out, and they came to a lot of the games and watched, and they liked what they saw. So.
And the thing about hockey that is, I think, different than a lot of the other high school sports is the road to college or ultimately, knock on wood, a dream of a professional career is different than the other sports because, say you're a football standout, it's pretty straightforward. You play high school football, and then you go straight to college, and then, if you're lucky enough, you go straight to the pros. With hockey, there's so many different roads to get there. And you mentioned Team Wisconsin. You mentioned, we've talked about Wausau West, now with the national team. There are a lot of roads that you have to kind of traverse in order to get to your dreams, correct?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's so many paths, like you said, and it looks different for everybody. So luckily for me, I was able to have a nice path, and hopefully it just keeps going this way. And
before we talk about what your life on the ice is right now with the national team, I wanted to ask you about how much playing for a program like West helped, and how much being part of a Team Wisconsin kind of situation as well. Did you need basically both of those to get to the point that the national team was looking at you?
Yeah, for sure. I think just starting off with Team Wisconsin, like the level was higher, so I was able to go out there and play for my teammates and just be like a leader sort of a thing. And just playing for West, like, the players might not have been as high of a skill, but I was able to help the people around me, which really helped me. And I think just kind of not being like a leader, but also just like going out there and practice and helping the guys, like getting them, like make them better. I think that helped me too, even though it's not like a thing that, I don't know, like you can't say that that's like a main thing that helped you, but I think for me that really was like just being able to help my friends and teammates and stuff. It was a really good feeling.
Again, we're talking to Brady Cleveland, former Wausau West hockey standout, currently a member of the USA Hockey National Team Development Program. As only 17, and to be uprooted from your life, to move to Michigan, they have what are called billet families, correct?
Yep.
What was that like? Before we get to the hockey, I imagine that could be some of the biggest adjustment at a young age to be uprooted, to go to a different area from where you've grown up. Was that difficult? Was it exciting? How did that go?
I think for me it was like just difficult at first a little bit. It was like weird almost, like you're just show up at these random people's house and you're just like, hey, I'm here to stay. And I mean, luckily enough, my billet family, they're great people and they took me in, so they made me feel right at home. But yeah, no, the first couple of weeks were just hard adjusting, just the different lifestyle change and all that, but eventually just kind of fell into place and now I feel at home there. So
when you first went on the ice, I mean, this was obviously a big step to be selected. As you said, they scoured the entire country looking for these players in order to start them at this young age, to train in, I think, a similar way to try to build not only, this program, but ultimately maybe Olympic programs and World Championship programs as well. When you first went on the ice, what was that like? Was it in a sense, a hockey shock, or did your experiences have you ready to go at the speed and the level of competition and your teammates that you felt right away when you hit the ice?
Yeah, I think for me it was kind of like I just felt at home almost. Like I wanted to be around the best players and compete with them every day. And for me, I'm a very competitive person. I always want to be the best. So when I got out there, I might not have been the best player, but I always competed and everybody else does the same. So it was great just seeing the group of guys. They all are similar. Like some of them might be better or more skilled than the other ones, but everybody just competes.
It's got to be really cool in a sense that these are all guys, you're basically your same age. You're all guys that probably have, in some situation, in terms of hockey, similar backgrounds. Because to get to this point, I think you all have to succeed at a certain level, at not just within your schools, but also outside the schools. In your case, Team Wisconsin. I imagine it's incredibly cool to be put into something that you love so much with people that love it just as much as you do.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think just everybody playing back home, like before they made the program, or the big dogs or the best players of their team, and then everybody comes together and finds their role, and just it's awesome. It's like there's nothing like it, and those guys are my brothers, so it's really special seeing that and just getting to share their experiences with us from like past, and now we get to do it together.
So when I was seeing you on the ice as a freshman and a sophomore, you were immediate impact for Wausau West. You, as a defenseman, had some really good offensive numbers in addition to what you did on the blue line. How have you changed as a player since I saw you play as a freshman and sophomore to where you are today? What are the areas that maybe you've expanded your game more or have got better at? What are the areas that have changed for Brady Cleveland as a hockey player?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Just for me, like my numbers might not be the same as when I was in high school. I think in high school it was easier for me to play offensive and get those points, but I think as a bigger guy, and I kind of filled out my frame a little bit, so I'm a little heavier, but just changed my game, more defensive defenseman now, physical defenseman. So I I don't really play much offense. I mean, I pass the puck up ice, but that's what I have to do, and that's my role on the team. So I changed my game, but it's also been for the better, though. Like, the coaches told me last year, I had a role to fill, and I filled that role, and I was lucky enough to be able to play up with the 18, so I'm just doing whatever they tell me, and it's been working out good.
And for folks who obviously can't see Brady, 6'4", still 6'4"?
Yeah.
What, 205? Is that what you're listening? 215 now, so even had a little bit more. So obviously one of those classic big defensemen. For somebody like me who's old, I remember a guy like Larry Robinson way before your time, a big defenseman who really was the foundation. A lot of teams look at it as a foundational piece that if you got to win with a defenseman, but great defenseman Brady Cleveland again joining us here on the program. Where are some of the places you've been able to travel to play in either games or tournaments? Some of the interesting places that this opportunity has given you to see?
Yeah, so last year we went to Finland. That was really cool. It was Wausau, Finland. So it was up in the, I think, northwestern part of the country. That was a great place. That was my first international experience ever. I never went to Canada or anything before that. So that was really something special. You get there and everything is different. It's awesome. But no, that was a great time. And then last year we went to Slovakia. That was a little bit different because of the COVID. There was kind of a lot of restrictions. So we still got to see a lot of stuff, but that was a complete different landscape than Finland. It was complete opposite. And then at the end of the year I got to go to Germany. So I was in Landshut, Germany, and that was a great experience for U18 Worlds. And we got to walk around, see the downtown. It was really, really beautiful place. But just being in Europe and stuff, it's great experience, not even for hockey, just for personal experiences. You get to experience a lot over there, and I'll remember those times for the rest of my life.
What jumps out about the teams you played? Obviously, to see teams from other countries, is the hockey different than the way they play it, or is hockey truly international in terms of the style of play? But I guess, are there, if I were to say, Team Germany or anybody else, are there differences that you can notice in the way that hockey is played over there?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think for most of the European teams like Finland and Sweden, they kind of have more of a skilled game, structured game. I think all the teams over there are really structured, how they play. But for the U.S., for example, I think we're more of we're a structured team, but we're also work hard is our biggest thing. The skill will come after that. And I think for most of the European teams, they're more skilled. They'll play a more structured game, which luckily with our skill on our team, we're able to kind of use that to our advantage.
What's your season like? Because we know what a hockey season is around here. When does your season start? When does it end? Is this a 12-month a year program? Could you talk about what the calendar looks like?
Yeah, so I moved back there at the end of August, and then I think our first games were mid-September. So that's when we started our schedule, and we only had one off weekend between the middle of September all the way until December when I get to come back here. So no, it's a lot of games, tons of games, a lot of training, and our season goes all the way until mid-April. That's when U18 Worlds start. So U18 Worlds goes until early May, and then that'll be the end of the season. But it's a lot of games. It's really tough schedule. Last week we had 3 games, so you don't really get a lot of time off. But it's good because they're preparing you for what the pros do, because the pros, they're playing night in and night out.
You mentioned the pros, and before we went on, NHL draft and things like that. Again, it's different because for the other major sports like NFL, it's a college football player. When are you eligible? Are you eligible for the NHL draft yet, or what's the timeline?
Yeah, so this year I'll be eligible for the draft. That will be my first year of eligibility for that, and then I think after that, I'm not sure how it works. I think I have one more year after that if I don't get picked up this year.
Okay, and say somebody during the course of the NHL draft announces your name. What happens then? Do you have options, I guess, because we're going to talk about this in a moment. You are committed to play college hockey at the University of Wisconsin. How does it work? Does a team keep your rights? Do you have an option to say, I would rather go back into the draft? How does that work? Or do you? It's probably a little complicated, but it is interesting.
Yeah, it really is complicated, I think. So if a team drafts me, then they have my rights, and then from that you go to a camp and you kind of showcase yourself in that camp, and then you're able to sign an entry-level contract if they're available for you or they want you to, and then if not, they just keep your rights, and then you'll go on to play college, and they'll kind of watch you develop and see where your path is. And then I think once college will be done, then you kind of go play in one of the pro leagues if you're not ready for the NHL, so ECHL or AHL, and then they develop you through there, and they hope for you to play on the team one day, so they do what's best for you.
Again, we're talking to Brady Cleveland, the former Wausau West hockey standout, now a member of the USA Hockey National Team Development Program. Said it, Badgers. And I was reading some quotes that Tony Granado, the head coach of the Badgers, was been talking about you when you had the official announcement recently that you signed your national letter of intent, and it said you bleed red and white. This is big for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's huge. I think just growing up in the state, you see the Badger logo everywhere, and growing up, I actually didn't really want to go to Wisconsin. I wasn't really sure about that, but then once I was able to take my unofficial visit down there, I think 2 months before I actually committed there, I just knew it was the place for me.
And the thing about it is, right now Wisconsin has struggled for a number of years, and the thing is, and I thought about this before again talking to you, is I wouldn't be talking to you if it wasn't for Badger hockey when I was growing up, because back in the day, before major cable, they were on tape delay on public television, and I grew up watching that and loving it and watching them play for national championships. What would it mean for you to help lift Wisconsin hockey back to the heights they once had?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think just, they have struggled recently, but just going in there, not even myself, but the group that we have going in there, I think can really be powerful in changing the culture there. I think that's one of the bigger things. We got to make sure everybody's bought into the system and everybody's going, because, it is a historic program, and to not have that right now, it's frustrating for not only the players, but the fans. And I think just being able to get that back on track would be something special.
Again, with college hockey, it's different than some of the other sports. Sometimes go play junior hockey and then go to college. What is your timeline? When do you expect to be on campus at Wisconsin playing for the Badgers?
Yeah, so next year I'll be going in there to play. So I talked to Tony, and luckily enough I was able to send my national letter, and yeah, I'll be going in there next year.
And that's actually rather, I don't know, is it unusual? I mean, because sometimes they do basically send them out to get some more experience. That must show a lot of confidence in the coaches, in yourself, and that has to probably add to your confidence as well.
Yeah, it's a lot different. So most players will play juniors for a number of years. I think a lot of the guys that are going in, I don't think any of them else are true freshmen except for me and Zach Scholes. So luckily that's good enough for us. But no, they've seen us, and they trust us with our abilities, and I'm grateful for that. I think we've put in the work, and we deserve that.
There's a Wausau West connection down in Madison with Andy Brandt, who's obviously the brother of your former coach, BJ Brandt. That must be kind of cool, having a Wausau West connection now, going to Madison, trying to lift the Badger hockey program.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think I went down there for my official visit, I think in October sometime, and I went down there, and he picked me up from the airport, and it was I was just at home, just being able to know somebody, I know him but not know him right. So close, just because through his brother.
Let's go back to your do you feel like you missed anything by not playing high school hockey the last 2 years, or is it all positive leaving for the big stage with the national developmental team?
Yeah, I think it's been positive overall, just for my development as a hockey player. I think just on a personal level, missing out the time with my friends, good times. I know I could be having great times right now, but I think that's the only thing I probably miss. It's something that you have to do though if you want to be the best, and I think just going over there, it's been great with strength training, just being on the ice all the time. They're doing the best for all the players, and that's what I just buy into.
Could I ask you maybe one or two things that you have found out in the last 2 years as part of this program that, man, you think, wow, this really does help me in terms of my hockey that I really hadn't thought about? What some areas that, because obviously they're on the cutting edge of trying to get the best out of everybody that's part of this program. What in particular have you seen that said, man, this is really something that's going to help me ultimately reach all my goals on the ice?
Yeah, I think the strength training is a big piece for me. Like what we were talking about earlier, I'm a bigger guy, so just going in there, I was 190, and I came out last year around 215, so put on a ton of weight, which really helped me. You'd think I would get slower, but no, they found a way, and I'm faster now. But I think just for my size and the way that I play, just being able to go in there and lift weights, and all our strength coach, they're geniuses, so they know how to do it in the right way, and just being able to go in there, my game's just taken off.
Let me ask you about that, because sometimes you get bigger, it takes away some flexibility or speed. Has that happened with you, or are you bigger, faster, stronger in all areas?
Yeah, I think I'm bigger, faster, and stronger. Like we said, I don't think I have had any negative impacts.
What about academics? Because you left high school after your sophomore year. Is there an academic aspect to what they do with the program?
Yeah, so I'm actually doing WAVE right now, which is the Wausau Area Virtual Education System, and so most of the guys do something else that's over in Michigan. But yeah, we have like a certain block of time every day where they set us down in our classroom, and yeah, we just sit there, and the teacher helps us do our school. And I mean, it's something like, it's a lot different than high school. Like, you have to have more accountability on yourself and a lot of responsibility, and our schedule gets crazy, so it's just kind of managing all that, which I think is a good piece to help you in life.
Do you have any idea what you're going to focus on at Madison, or is it something that's still kind of up in the air?
I'm not very sure. I think maybe something like exercise science, kinesiology, something like that.
Take some of that stuff you learned with the national team program, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Very good. During the last couple of years, you lost somebody. Anybody who follows your social media posted right there, your hero, your dad passed away after you joined this program. What did your dad mean to you in terms of getting you to where you are today?
Yeah, he meant a lot. I think he provided everything that I need. I wouldn't be where I am today without him, frankly. And he was always my biggest supporter, and he had to do what he had to do to make sure that me and my brother could play hockey. And he'd send us with people on trips. He worked 2 jobs for a long time. I don't think a lot of people knew that about him, and he really worked hard for me and my brother to be able to give us the opportunity to play. So,
how difficult was it after this big opportunity to have your dad leave you in this time? Because I imagine he must have been so proud. Right now, I see you wearing the USA hat and the USA pullover. It's just it makes me feel good seeing it, because it's loved watching you on the ice a few years ago. I imagine, man, it's like every time you do something great, you must want to say, "Dad, this is what I did."
Yeah, for sure. I think just like I remember clearly, like making the team in the car. Like, we were in the car after our meeting that we had with him, telling him that I made the team, and he looked over at me and he was like telling me how proud he was of me, and that was something like really special to me. Because he wasn't gonna pump my tires up all the time. Like, he expected
right.
me to do like what I was supposed to do, and then he would always like come in later and always like be so appreciative. But yeah, for sure, I think like just doing everything that I do is just been like for him. Like, that's what I always take out of it. Like, yeah, you don't have like a day to waste on this earth. Like, he was gone so quick, and I think just with that, like, even though it's been hard on my life, it's also helped me, like, in the sense that every day I got to go out there and do what I'm supposed to do my job, and just work towards my dreams, because that's what he'd want me to do.
What's the rest of the year look like? Obviously, you're here. Then you said you're going to be going back into this very long season. Again, it must be incredibly, it feels like, I tell people around here that the winter sports season feels long, but it's nothing like what you guys are dealing with. What does the rest of the year, when 2023 gets underway, look like for you? Yeah,
so starting next year, I think we got 4 college games to start off, so we'll have that. We play in Madison on January 13th, wow. I believe, so we'll be down there. We play the Capitals one night and then the Badgers the next night, so that'll be pretty special for me. But yeah, a lot of college games, and then USHL picks up more towards the end of the season, and then we'll start to get prepared for U18 Worlds. That's like the big championship for us, so we'll have that. And then in February, we actually get to go to Finland, so that'll be our second international tournament of the year. Our first one was actually home, luckily, but we'll be able to go over there and experience that. But it'll be a busy second half, but it'll also be very quick.
And when do you actually go to Madison? When are you going to move down there, get ready for school? Is it near the start of next fall?
Yeah, I think so. I think during the summer I have to go down there for spring training, so I'll go down there for a little bit, and then once I'll come back maybe for like a week or 2. I'm not sure exactly how it goes, and then I'll move down there for the season.
Very cool. And do you follow Wausau West hockey at all?
I do, actually. A lot of my friends play on there, so yeah, I always check in, watch some of the games once in a while, look at the scores.
Make sure the goals against stays down. That's
yeah.
the best, right? Well, Brady, again, congratulations on all your accomplishments. Again, I said it's hard to believe, only 17, but you've been able to do so much already. Really looking forward to seeing what you do in 2023, and especially when you get that red and white on down in Madison. But congrats on everything, and again, thanks for popping on over.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Brady Cleveland, the former Wausau West High School standout, and again, member of the USA Hockey National Team Development Program, and heading to Madison to be a member of the Wisconsin Badgers starting next fall. We're going to take a break. We'll come back with more here on Bull Falls Radio 98.9 and 1230. And welcome back. Big high school sports show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes. Again, thanks to Brady Cleveland. Boy, what a terrific start of his hockey career it's been. Hard to believe he's only 17 years old, but he's already experienced traveling around the world. Was terrific as a freshman and sophomore for West. Has been playing very well as well for the national development team, and now getting set to play for the Wisconsin Badgers starting next fall. Coming up at 7 o'clock, we will be joined by the head boys basketball coach of the Stratford Tigers, Curt Schmidt. They have a tournament coming up over the next couple of days, starting tomorrow, then finishing up on Friday. But let's talk a little bit about the girls' side in terms of high school basketball. Start with the Wisconsin Valley Conference. Couple of teams were involved in games yesterday. DC Everest fell to St. Croix Central 69-54, and Wausau East came from behind. They fell behind by 13 early. They had a chance to win it late, but in the end, Newman Catholic defeat the Lumberjacks 47-45. For East, Charlie Place had 13 points, Haley Velisca 11, Maggie Wolf 21 for Newman Catholic, Sydney Galang 16. You were there. I was there. What jumped out about the East Lumberjacks and the Newman Cardinals?
Well, for it was, I guess, sometimes you get these Christmas games where it can get a little sloppy. People can extra turnovers, a lot of, a handful of fouls. I thought, both teams played hard. You could tell how bad each one wanted that W. He just wanted to win. It's a local game, which is a big deal. I think for for East, I think they're still just trying to find their identity. I mean, I don't think the girls, it's not that they don't play hard, but, some extra turnovers here, some times where they had some defensive lapses. And I think for Newman, they're just still trying to combine that youth with a couple of seniors that they have and get some consistency there. And I think for Newman, just trying to get a couple looks from the outside. I think both teams had great effort, but there's just going to have to be more broadening of the scoring range that Newman has, and I think East is going to continue to just try to get back into conference play and find some W's. And I think it shows too, the first time when the two teams played, Newman won by 13. It shows there's no givens when people are playing hard. And I think for Newman, they had to battle through it. And I thought down the stretch, there's a couple good hustle plays that took place that solidified that win when they weren't able to knock down some final shots to make it there. So, as from a spectator, going back and forth is good. Obviously, I want to set bias towards Newman because I work there, want to see them win. So I was happy that they came out on the winning edge of the score table.
You only root for East on the boys' side, right?
I root for any relation I have at anyone. So yeah, I do because I got relations there.
Exactly.
So yes, I where my relations are, I'm going to root for them.
There you go. Today there's plenty of action involving Wisconsin Valley Conference girls basketball teams. Merrill Blue Jays earn another win. They rolled Augusta 76-32 at a tournament, the Elmwood tournament. And for the Blue Jays, again, they've shown the ability to put the ball in the hoop so much better this year. They got, again, Maya Ott leading the way, but they got multiple kids that have been able to perform, I think, pretty well so far this year.
Well, my calc at 7 wins already, so that's 7-5, sitting at a solid mark. And when Coach DeBoer was on early, he made me think of some things. That computer-generated system, he talked about it. We have a tough enough conference to play in, and we can get some solid games in there. And he's like, we're going to go out and play all over the place for our non-conference schedule because we want to get the W's to help up our ante when the everything gets thrown in the computer at the end of the season. So a significant in terms of the score, they won well with 76-32 over Augusta, and doing a solid job. They won over the East girls in one of their last conference games. They beat Rhinelander non-conference. And one of the things I know that's a big deal to them is Maya Ott is producing 20-plus points a game, which helps out tremendously to get some of those W's.
Couple of teams from the Valley participating in the Century Classic at the Quad in Stevens Point. Earlier today, Fond du Lac beat Wisconsin Rapids 65-34. Stevens Point tonight taking on Greenwood. Also, Marshfield is participating, I think, probably finished up by now. They're playing Hudson at their Marshfield Classic, and also at that Marshfield event earlier this afternoon, Wausau West met Superior, but unfortunately have not been able to track down any scores either for Marshfield versus Hudson or Wausau West versus Superior.
Start with Rapids?
Yeah, start with Rapids.
I guess Rapids, because it's a score that we have. They're struggling to get W's not only in their conference and overall in some of these things. You don't want to take one on the head with a 30-point loss, but you have to figure things out. They bump back and play Greenfield in the Century Class, which is a nice local tournament to play in. So I think still for them, just it's a different team this year with the scoring they lost and some of the seniors in Clary and thinking the other one was King. They had two scorers last year. I know one was Clary.
Right.
And the other name eludes me. But anyways, they've been recovering since then. For the other teams, I think it's an interesting factor if we ever get some final scores on it to see. Marshfield and West are playing the same two teams, and to kind of give you a comparison of where they stand. After they both play Hudson and Superior.
And actually, the Hudson, it says...
Got one up yet?
Well, it says Hudson is taking on Marshfield at 7:30, according to Hudson Girls Basketball Twitter. So maybe they pushed the games back. Maybe that's what... Yeah. Maybe the times that I saw were not correct for the Wausau West game as well. So I'm assuming that if the varsity for Marshfield is taking on Hudson at 7:30, that maybe the game between Wausau West and Superior was a bit later than I had thought, according to some of the stats that I saw. So.
Well, it very well could be, because some of the games when we came on the air were either like they started at 5 and they were finishing up and you won't get a score right away, and some of them aren't until 7:15, 7:30. So interesting to see though that they have the same non-conference opponents, because that's going to be a big game when West and Marshfield play in conference.
Right, exactly right. And we'll look ahead to some other activity going on. West plays Hudson tomorrow, Superior against Marshfield, so they kind of flip opponents, and we'll talk a bit more about that as well. Great Northern Conference, again, not a lot to really talk about between the postponements from late last week and not a lot of action going on. But today, Mosinee fell to Auburndale 52-46. I guess for Mosinee, it was a very slow start to the season. Auburndale's a solid basketball team from the Merriwood South. Auburndale, I'm sure, will take the win, but for Mosinee at that Auburndale tournament to go on the road and challenge, it is a team that is taking strides.
Right. I think Mosinee is, getting better. They beat Edgar 46-31 in one of their last games before the Christmas break, and I think seeing another Merriwood South opponent is a good test to see where you stand. So a tight one for Mosinee. I think we've seen some improvements in their record overall. They're sitting at roughly 500, but they're 3-1, sitting behind Lakeland in the Great Northern. So I think that's a good. You got to feel good about that after they lost a lot to graduation. For Auburndale, they get a lot of scoring back, and I think they're going to be one of those. You can't overlook them in that conference, but it seems like they're still trying to get their feet wet because they've been a little inconsistent. They've lost a couple games to some of the northern teams. They've been up and down in the South. They won at home against a team they should have beat, I think, with Mosinee. So it'll be interesting to see how they step out and the consistency they can play with after the Christmas break is over here.
Absolutely. And Lakeland challenging themselves. Taking on Aquinas today. I've not seen a score on that one, but that's a very interesting matchup. Aquinas has been very good in recent years, and of course, Lakeland has been outstanding. And
and playing down at the Watertown tournament, they're Lakeland's 7-3. Again, those blemishes on their record are all non-conference games, and we look at them as one of the elite teams in that Great Northern Girls Conference that's going to stay on top of that, I would think, all year long and win a conference championship. But it'll be interesting. I want to see that score of that Aquinas game because Aquinas has been very good in recent years, and I think that's another good testament to a tough non-conference schedule that Lakeland plays.
Absolutely. We're going to have to leave it right there because we're coming up on a hard break here at the end of the first hour. We're going to take a quick break and then come back in just a moment and be able to talk to the head boys basketball coach at Stratford High School. Yep. Coming up, we're going to talk to Curt Schmidt. It's been a bit of an up and down start, but also a challenge as well because whenever you have a football team that goes as deep as Stratford did, it does cause some issues for some of these kids that also play basketball. So we'll talk to Coach Curt Schmidt about that, the Merriwood Conference South, and a whole bunch more. He's Jeff Gress. I'm Chad Holmes. Another hour of the Big High School Sports Show coming up on Bull Falls Radio 98.9. And welcome back. It's hour number 2 of the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes, and very happy to welcome to our program our coach guest for this week, the head boys basketball coach at Stratford High School, Curt Schmidt. And first of all, Coach, again, I know it's a busy holiday tournament week, including for your team, getting set for a couple of games the next 2 nights. Thank you for spending a few minutes with us.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, to start things off, I want to ask you, first of all, before we start delving into what's happened so far with your team, your conference, and everything else, could you talk about maybe one of the challenges at Stratford, where so often you have a football program that goes so deep, and this year, again, the Stratford Tigers able to go all the way in terms of their football season, go to Madison, win a championship. What kind of challenge is that for you? Because you often have some of the football players that play basketball. How do you go about the transition between football and basketball for your student athletes?
Well, it's definitely a challenge. You're proud to be a part of a school where winning takes place, in a lot of sports. And but in basketball and wrestling, you have an overlap from the football season. If you go to the state tournament or win a state championship, however you want to look at it, there's overlap. And, there's about 2 weeks, where you're behind, and you always balance you want to get started because you're going to pay the price starting later, but then you got to balance the mental health of the kids, coming off of a long season for them there, where it's a grind when you're in the playoffs. There's pressure. There's just a lot of commitment, and then now you're about to start a 4 month season where it takes a lot to get ready, and of course you're going against teams when you do finally get started. You don't have all your stuff in. You're just trying to do your basics, and you're trying to get in shape. You're trying to get your legs intact. We started out 3-0, and then we faced definitely our tougher conference teams, and obviously we held it pretty close for the first half of the first 3/4 of the game, and then you could just see the legs just go, and then we didn't shoot well, and so it's a challenge. I don't have a perfect answer for it. It is what it is. You just do your best, and you don't play based off an outcome. You look at getting better every day and just trying to get caught up. I always tell people it takes until probably mid-January until you feel totally caught up, whether it's all your installs, your legs, your fundamentals, your experience, and you're facing a ton of different defenses, and like this year we only have 2.5. I say 2.5 because our third guy didn't have a lot of minutes last year, but we really only brought back 2 experienced players, and so that's a challenge because now on JV we keep things very, very basic and simple, and we really focus on the fundamentals and development. And our JV coach Bill Knetter just does a spectacular job, as well as our JV2 coach Derek Austin. Well, when you get to varsity, you're going against a lot of different things, so it's definitely a challenge.
Well, Coach, first off, thanks for coming on. I know it's a busy time, and you got your tournament coming up, and it's we just get off the Christmas holidays. Everyone wants a little breather, and you just don't have that. So appreciate your time tonight. But I guess my question was, just in the last couple of years, you went from the COVID years where you had, your son's class. And by the way, I got to say, your son's great. He was nice enough to come say hi to me when we were over at Stratford. He came and shook my hand on the bench. So
yeah, I didn't even know you were going to be there.
Yeah,
so that if I'd have known that, I'd have taken a trip over.
No, I got it. It was nice that he acknowledged me, though. I felt important at that moment. So even though we were in the middle of a timeout in a crucial 6th grade boys basketball game. But anyways, my question is just the transition. transition of your from your coaching and the players that you have. You go from those years with COVID where you have such an authoritative, skilled lineup with your son and those other guys that played with him, and then the next and then the team that I watched you coach last year. I thought you just they were so disciplined and balanced and controlled, and whether or not kids stood out really skilled or not, they did what they needed to do to be successful, and that comes from coaching guidance in my mind. And then this year, like you said, you're changing to a more inexperienced group and getting their feet under them after the first part of the season. So for you as a coach, how is it, what's your philosophy? How important is it to adjust to your players but still have the systems that you're comfortable with? What's your outlook or your take on that, I guess?
Well, we adjust. I mean, we have a flexible system. That group 2-3 years ago, we ran more of a high-low and a double post type thing, and offensive system. We had a different zone offensive system where we sealed the backside. We lobbed it up to them when guys would slide on their defensive slide on the backside. We'd get that, and 2-6-5 guys. We had 3 guards that would do what they needed to do, but our focus was to work it until we got it up to them. And the team just packed it in super tight. We had enough skill to hit some threes when we needed to, but we also strategically would put those guys in offense where they could get the rebound. If we didn't hit, Ben Barton had 1,000 points, and man, he had a lot of points through rebound putbacks. And we had him opposite of the ball a lot on purpose. This group, we're short. We're not very tall, and so we have to do more 5 guys cutting into certain areas, pinning the zone in, not necessarily sealing it to get lobs, but pinning it in and then flipping, and just trying to get a lot of 2-on-1s in the zone offense, not necessarily having one guy sealed, the backside and then throw it up to him. So this group here, and last year's group, we did a lot of that too, where we were a shorter team, but the guys really knew their roles, and they just they played as one. This year, we're still trying to get that. We're trying to create that identity. We're trying to, when you go to state in football too, you lose your scrimmage. So a scrimmage, as you go against 3 different teams usually, and they'll throw different things at you, on purpose. You ask them, hey, can you throw an extended 2-3 zone or packed in 2-3 zone, 1 through, you know how it is. Mm-hmm. And so then you can kind of gauge that stuff. And then you can adjust. But, in the summer, you can't always tell because, you're not teaching the system. You're letting the kids play. You know what I mean? Just play. You don't have practices to practice things. So, and then, as the season starts, I had 2 guys last year that didn't even play last year because they were injured all year. And so how that is when you don't even play a whole year, you're behind skill-wise and you're behind experience. And so right now I'm feeling like we're trending in the right direction with, we had a big win against Edgar the other night. And we still made some, critical mistakes, and, we kind of got flustered. But I feel over break here, we've been able to kind of make some positive adjustments that we think that hopefully this will kind of help these guys more going forward. But it's stuff I haven't done much before. I've done a little of it. But it's concepts, like a motion concept, hit these crucial areas in the zone, but we have different guys flashing to it instead of being more of a stationary zone offense where you use, ball movement because you have guys in critical spots. But now I don't have true post players. So, and we have some guys that can really shoot that 15-foot shot well, but they're a little bit short. It's a puzzle. I mean, it really is. But it's fun. I mean, I enjoy it. It definitely stretches you. You sit my break time. I've been pad and paper pretty regularly, drawing up things and putting guys in spots, and how do I come up with a drill to get this so they understand it and that it becomes automatic. So, I've had many years before the group that we had a couple of years ago, and I never coached, to coach my own kid or to coach one particular group. You just, I love the challenge every year because I got kids that want to do well, they want to learn, and that's the beauty of it. Today we had a really good part of our practice where we had some young guys making mistakes regularly, and then now they were finally, like, for example, the biggest concept is faking your pass, set it up against the zone, because we've been facing pretty heavy dosage of zones, we're excited to get the tournament going so we can kind of see where we're at. We got better defensively within the last week and a half, I thought. We played a really good defensive game against Edgar, and then we played a good one, I thought, overall against Marathon, but we were down, I think, 7 with 7 minutes to go. We ended up losing by 28, I think. The wheels totally came off, but yet we competed, but shots weren't falling. I think we shot 22% from the floor as a whole. We were missing layups, and it's one of those games where you just, this is just how it is. There's a lid on the basket tonight. And now we just got to regroup and take one game at a time.
Again, we're talking to Stratford boys basketball coach Curt Schmidt here on the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Coach, you mentioned the fact the lack of game experience for much of the squad. So far this season, who are the leaders for this team, the guys that, beyond your coaching staff, beyond yourself, that try to take these steps forward with your guys? Because obviously you got to get it, I think, from your coaching staff as well in the teaching process, but also the leadership within a squad. Who are the leaders right now for your team in terms of maybe helping some of these less experienced guys take those steps?
Well, I think that's still, trying to be developed. I had 2 real returners, and they have to now learn how to lead. And we've talked about that pretty regularly every practice, how important it is for the best teams, best led teams are player led teams, not a coach led team. We've been talking about this pretty heavily, but we have quiet guys, and our 2 returners will be our leading scorers, but they're not real vocal guys, and so sometimes the younger guys look a little lost, and you're trying to teach them, hey, point at them, and when they give you a good pass, and then gather everybody together and just pump them up, but Ashton Wrench is one of our returners, and Braden Schuler, and that's something that we're trying to help them lead, and that's a process, and it's not easy for everybody to lead. Johnny Seitz is back. He didn't play last year; he was injured, so he's one of our leaders, seniors, and then Isaiah Hadlock, Ben Zilke, and then we have some juniors and a couple sophomores that play. It's some people naturally really lead, and some people it's just not a comfortable thing for them. And that group we had 2 years ago, we had dynamic leadership, and then last year we had good leadership. And it's not always vocal and rah-rah. It's just they just know how to do things and get everybody calmed down, and they just lead by example. And right now we're still trying to work through, leading, developing leaders on our team.
And Coach, you talk about the transit. You like the way your team's developing and going. You like the direction you see coming out of them as the learning process is starting to unfold for what you want, what they need to do, and what success you want to find. And you saw it to hold against Edgar, to hold the team to 44 points. That's a good night defensively with 2 halves of basketball. You lost. I think in the postponement, you lost the Mosinee game then. At that point,
well,
you'll make it up, but but you lost it at that exact date, and now you're bouncing back into your own tournament. With you put East Bangor, and you start off with Owen Withy, the 3 other teams in there. What do you want to see out of your kids in this tournament over the next 2 games? What would be like barring win or loss, what would be a success to you that if they do these things, we're going the direction that I want to see them start moving into?
Like especially our two leading scorers, the other guys got to realize that they have to have the ability to be a threat to score. And because, as well as I do, when you have two leading scorers, that's what's, they're going to have a target on their back every night. And we tried to come up with some stuff here where they can kind of get a little bit more good looks instead of trying to, get looks naturally when everybody working together in a nice little offensive, system that we're trying to run. And I guess to answer your question, I just want to see just improvement, get our shooting percentage up to a level it needs to be, because there was about 3 games there where we lost, where we shot low 30s and high 20s, and then the one was 22%. And good looks, just not going in the hole, and part of that is if you're seeing zones, it's not easy to get layups in easy baskets, and you're going against better teams who handle the ball decent, so you're not getting a lot of bust-out layups off turnovers. And, I'd like to see us really, really break down the defense to more 2-on-1s or 1-on-1 in right by the basket and not settling for outside shots when you see a zone. Defensively, we're trending, I feel, in the right direction, but we got to get better at the adjustment part of the game. Let's say you got to defend good low post play. Well, we have stuff we like to do on that, but kids got to be on the same page when we defend that. If you need to get a quick trap, somewhere to create a turnover, you got to be able to get to that without wondering what we're doing or trying to figure out how to do it. So we've been repping and repping and repping. The 3 practices this week have been very good at getting a lot of reps in everybody and throwing out different scenarios and how do you react. Instead of me telling them what to do, how are you going to handle this? Oh, we should do this because of this. Correct. Faking your passes. Last year, if I remember right, we averaged 6 or 7 turnovers a game last year. You saw a few of our games, I'm assuming. Mm-hmm. We were very, very disciplined, but we really, really took care of the ball well. Like, we really understood how to pass, how to fake, and how to play in control. Stuff that rattled us. Nothing rattled us last year. We've been rattled heavily about 2-3 times this year where we're just rattled. A team throws something at you and you got guys looking at each other. And part of that is not enough practice time to go through those situations, and part of it is you got to experience it and then you got to teach from it. But you can't cover everything in the world in such a short period of time, early in the season. So that's what I want to see. I just want to see us be able to react and be able to break down a defense. If they're going to trap us hard, if they're going to run a trapping zone, 3/4 court press, how can we break them down for easy baskets? Not quick one pass, shoot along 3, but how do we break them down, get to the free throw line? The 3-pointers will be there. The games we won this year, we shot less 3-pointers and higher percentage, but we got more easy baskets, more baskets close to the rim. So that's what I'm looking for, is just getting. I'm not worried about the score right now. I'm focusing on just the player movement and then how they're playing off each other and for each other. And then defensively, are we grinding it? Because that's been a big staple of our program for many, many years, defense, to play good defense, because that'll keep you in games. So just getting better. That's it. Just trying to get better.
And what do you think? I think I saw one Withy play once or twice last year. I think I remember correct me if I'm wrong, they were young, they were sophomores, but they were big all across the board. And so, what do you tomorrow night? What do you expect out of them? And what are you going to see when they play you?
Well, they were junior dominated last year, pretty heavily. Had a couple seniors and I think a sophomore or two. And most of their better players come back. They're long. They're long. 6'4", 6'4", 6'3", 6'2". That's going to be a challenge, is getting easy baskets is not going to be easy because they're going to be contested with longer players, especially when you're 6 foot, 5'8", 5'9", that type of thing. But we have to rebound. We got to get them off. We got to check them off the boards because they feast on the interior and they feast off rebound putbacks. And they run a 3/4 court 1-2-2 press, and they do it kind of like a 1-3-1 where they try to bracket you in so that you have to throw over the top, and then they're hoping for tips and to go the other way. They take the middle away really well. They really rotate well. They want to bracket you, and they want to make sure that they can get tips and deflections. So if we can spread the floor and try to hit the passes in those windows, and not have to throw horizontal and vertically through those guys, but if we can kind of go a little bit more diagonally, I think we'll be fine. But they're a good team. It's a 50-50 game. They're very well experienced. They've got great length. And, we got to push the ball up, too. Try to beat them up the floor, before they can set up into their press and their half-court 1-2-2 and their switching man and all that stuff. So, we've prepared, and now kids need to just relax, and just have fun.
Again, we're with Curt Schmidt, the Stratford boys basketball coach here on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, big high school sports show. And before we let you go, got to ask you about this conference, because every year we talk about this conference being among the best in terms of small schools, not only around here, but around the state of Wisconsin. It looks like this year there's truly not a soft touch, to say the least. You've had a chance to get a taste of your league so far, and of course it really starts to heat up after the start of the new year. But boy, from one to the bottom, there's not anybody that is not a pretty good basketball team, is there?
Well, it's competitive. I would argue with anybody that we're by far one of the best small school conferences in the state. And facing a Marathon in Auburndale early for us is just, it's not, that makes things tough because they always seem like they're in mid-season form, pretty early. And we saw that when we faced them. And, Assumption is, they play super hard and they can hit outside shots. They're scrappy. They hustle. Edgar, we were fortunate to win against them. They played Marathon pretty close. They really played Newman pretty close. They're an athletic group, and it's and then you got like Athens is a nice team in the north, and there's some other ones too that'll be really competitive. But we have a tough non-conference schedule too. So it's going to be it's just going to be a difficult grind where we have our window is very small to make mistakes. We have to just, I guess, play basketball the old-fashioned way, and that is just take care of the ball, play great defense, take great shots, get to the free throw line, and then like last year's group, we were picked, I think, by the yearbook 4th. Well, we ended up having a 22-5 year, but we were picked 4th. Well, it's understandable because the teams ahead that were picked were good teams too. And then we ended up having a chance to win the conference with Marathon the last game of the year. Newman knocked us off. They're red hot. They played super well, and we ended up going to the sectionals. And that team really came together. And I'm hoping that that's something that can happen with this group. When we got to play Assumption right after the break here, and we got to play Newman yet. We haven't played them yet, and it's going to be a challenge. But I'm excited to see where you're at, as far as trending in the right direction, and competing hard and playing hard, taking care of the ball, taking good shots. And hopefully some other guys can start emerging a little bit more, besides the two guys that are returners that are good scorers.
And lastly, Coach, we've asked a couple other coaches that we've talked to this year, either on or off the air, just what their philosophy is with the new the computer system for playoffs, because we've talked about how some teams it worked out well and everything came out the way it should, and other teams it didn't, the way it was mixed up. So this year I've seen some teams just do difference, and they've changed up their scheduling. Some have gone with real difficult schedules. Others kind of gone, we're going to go where we feel we can get some wins here and there, and hopefully those teams have winning records. I don't know, has your philosophy changed at all with this computer system?
Well, not really. Here's what happens sometimes is when you're doing well. We've had about 6 or 7 years in a row here now where we've either won conference, won a regional title. We've done very, very well. So what happens is it's hard to find non-conference games because teams they don't want to play you. They want to kind of like maybe have a non-conference game that might be a little easier perhaps. And so like we have Medford. Medford is super good. We play East. We played Mosinee last year. We played them this year. We played Bangor last year. They're state runner-ups in D5. We beat Mosinee and Bangor last year. I think that schedule last year helped us in our seeding. I mean, I'm not a programmer. I'm not a whatever. But the only thing I can think of is because Marathon beat us twice last year, and we ended up being ahead of them seeding, and then we hosted a regional final against them and beat them. Well, in theory, it doesn't seem fair. They beat us twice, right? But I think the computer system must have looked at our obviously non-conference schedule and our overall strength of schedule. And we beat some pretty good teams. I mean, Mosinee was pretty good last year. And Bangor, as I said, we beat them, and you beat a Division II school like Wausau East and whatever. And so to answer your question, I don't think you're helping yourself at all if you try to schedule a weaker non-conference schedule. I don't think you're helping yourself at all. You might take one in the chin a couple times. You look at Marshfield, for example. Coach Fisher's done a really nice job there. Well, what does he do before he hits his conference? He plays the absolute best that he possibly can play. Kimberly's, Eau Claire Memorial's, La Crosse Central. He might. What was he? They're 1-4, 1-3, or something like that.
Yep.
And then they've hit their conference, and now I think they're 4-4, and they just beat Janesville Parker at the yearbook tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So the hard schedule he has created for himself before he gets his conference, you might be 1-4, but that's going to help you in the long run. So I think, but obviously you coached in Merriwood. It's not easy to get non-conference games before you start your conference games.
Right.
It starts pretty quick. So to answer your question, I do think even though you might lose against the Medford in your D4 team, and you might have a worse win-loss record, if you can beat some D2 teams or a really good D5 team like a Bangor, I think the computer must calculate, because I can't explain any other reason why we would have been ahead of Marathon last year in the seeding. I would be like, oh my goodness, how can this be? And I would understand if, Adam Jacobson would think that way. Because in the old way, it wasn't fair.
Right.
So now you put your fate in the computer's hands. But I think ultimately, because of how things have gone, it's probably the best way to go. Because you get rid of that ganging up, conferences, and how those, you've been at those, where you're fighting and scratching for top seed, but then you got to smooth a little bit, you feel like, and I don't know. It's kind of an uncomfortable thing sometimes going to those meetings, because you can get hard feelings if you vote a certain way and this team sees how you vote and they're like, wait a minute, what'd you do? Are you kidding? And then it creates hard feelings.
Right.
For future games and times. So I look at it as like, it's better than, remember the old way where it's all predetermined?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was like, oh my gosh, we're going to play Marathon the absolute first game of the year, and let's say we finished, the top of the conference. That's crazy.
Right.
But the other way was okay, but I think it got to be, there was getting to be too much ridiculous votes, and I think that's why experimented with football, and football had problems with how people were voting, and then I think right now you go by the computer and you just got to live with it, and it is what it is.
Coach, we really appreciate your time. I know, again, you have a couple of busy days coming up with hosting your tournament, that not only play, but everything else that goes with hosting a tournament. So, again, really appreciate the time. Best of luck as you continue into the 2023 part of your schedule. And, again, hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you again real soon.
All right. Thank you guys for having me. I enjoyed it. Absolutely.
Head coach Curt Schmidt of the Stratford Tigers. We're going to take a break and come back with more. It's the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes. Again, thanks to our guest, Curt Schmidt. That guy is really good. I mean, in terms of, you were saying off the air, in terms of explaining, it was an easy interview because the guy really is able to delve into what is going on in terms of what makes a team successful, what he's going to have to do tomorrow night in order to win. It was really, I thought, very interesting.
And I thought on the flip side, how well he knows his own team, what he wants to see out of them, what he thinks they still have to do. I think as much as it is X's and O's stuff, which Coach Schmidt explained really well, it's also those player connections and knowing, he does a great job of getting the most out of his kids, no matter what their skill sets are or attitudes or abilities, and putting that all together to make this winning success that is just popping at the end of the season during playoff time.
Let's look ahead in terms of the games in boys basketball to begin with, coming up here, end of this week into early next week as we start 2023. I'm going to start things off with the WVC. I think, of course, there are some interesting games going on with these tournaments. I think Wausau East participating in that Stratford tournament will give the Lumberjacks a couple of, I think, very good non-conference matchups. I think what you'll see from the Century Classic with teams like Stevens Point and Wisconsin Rapids are very interesting. But I think a couple of interesting games as well. A non-tournament game with Merrill hosting Chippewa Falls on Friday. As Merrill decides to break up their holiday break with one game. But I think next Tuesday, that West game against Rapids is the biggest game on the schedule. When you look at it all, what jumps out at you?
Well, obviously, first thing that kind of pops in my head is the philosophy of, do you need the two tournament games? Is it a good fit? Is popping one? Because teams have gone, like Merrill, like you said, it popped one team in there. I've seen Marathon do that over the years. They used to run a high school tournament for years, and now it's a game or two here and there over Christmas break. So I think staying active in your game schedule is a big deal at that time. But I like East going over to the Stratford tournament and testing. They play Bangor right away. That's a good basketball program that they're going to see and seeing how they stand up against them. And I think in the other game, however those games play out, because it's a true tournament, playing Stratford's a good foe, and Owen Withee with its size is going to be a good game to have. So I think they're getting their money's worth in those ones. I think looking at some of the games in the Century Classic for Spash to go out and test their youth against Stoughton and Eau Claire. I think it's Eau Claire North. I was going to say Memorial, but I wasn't. I think that's going to be some good games to continue to flourish some of their youthfulness. And Wisconsin Rapids is in the same boat. So again, you get these teams from the same conference playing the same opponents, so you can kind of stack where you feel you'll win out, or it's an extra chance to watch more games that your opponent is playing against live. It'd be interested to see how Marshfield has Brookfield East Thursday at the WBY shootout, and see how they do against another non-conference opponent team, because like Coach Schmidt talked about how Coach Fisher schedules some of these tough non-conference opponents. So I think they're going to want to continue to get that vote of confidence in those in those teams that they're playing. And, there's already some teams that have played Tuesday, Wednesday that are done. So just looking at some of those games on the boys' side, I think are a big deal. And for West, after, being in the games, having, if a couple things would go the way they wanted to offensively or defensively, with a chance to win those games, I think they're going to be ready. If I'm Coach Lemons, I want to get back to the practice floor as soon as I can, start tweaking what needs to be tweaked to get ready for the next part of my conference schedule. So Rapids becomes a big game in that sense.
Great Northern. You got Mosinee, a chance to win a championship at the Green Bay Preble tournament. I would imagine the host school would be a likely opponent tomorrow. Medford is participating in the Sheboygan North tournament. And I only mention this because I know we were down there a couple of times at Wisconsin Dells as Anico was playing Wisconsin Dells. And then, of course, back into the conference next Tuesday. Rhinelanders at Medford, Tomahawk at Lakeland, but the game, I think, of the week in terms of high school basketball will be in Mosinee next Tuesday night as Northern Pines pays a visit. So some interesting games for the GNC in the next few days, and especially leading right up to that massive, massive game between Pines and Mosinee Tuesday.
Yeah, let's start with Medford, who's hanging at one of the teams tied for the top of that conference. It'll be interesting to see because they've gone up and they've challenged themselves in non-conference games, but they're not consistent. They win one, they lose one. So I'm sure that's something they would like to finish out. And one of those games is tonight against Brookfield Academy, and then they play. I think that's a true tournament over there. I think they have to wait for the winner of winner, loser. For Mosinee, they got a big win against King Prep Lutheran today, 85-42, and I think I would like to think they could beat Green Bay Preble or Menasha, whoever won out in that game for their Thursday game. And Pines again took the other route. They did a boys-girls tandem over to Marinette High School to see. So I would.
Marinette's struggling. So.
Yeah, so I would think that they would come out on the winning end, but did it a little differently than going to a true tournament. So we need to. I want to see how these teams react, not only once they get on top, and that's the teams, I mean Medford, Mosinee, Northern Pines, since they're all tied at the top of that conference. It'll be interesting to see how they react once one of them gets that one and they're playing catch-up. Yep. When they lose that one game, and the other one that maintains control and the target's on your back, because those are both interesting spots to be in, and they're kind of a replica of what you got going on in the Merriwood South right now. So some interesting games there. The other interesting tournament that we haven't seen posted yet, I thought, just to point that out, I thought was the Elko tournament with it had right. Wisconsin Valley Lutheran, Flambeau, and Lakeland, and they did 2 games in the morning. And then the winners played again around supper time, which I thought was an interesting setup.
I did see Lakeland won their games both by pretty good margins, which is not to be unexpected. Right. Sure. But haven't seen the WVL scores yet.
And then the last one you mentioned, going down to the Dells, I always, as much as I liked it was always stressful when we went down to other play, because you found a different style of refereeing, different style of physical play, and I thought that was good for our players to get that and adjust to that adversity. But sometimes when you're sitting in there with a nice record and you come back with 2 losses, even though you played hard, you played pretty well, you could learn a lot about yourself. So I think that's good for Anigo to test himself in a different area and hit down to the Dells.
A lot of interesting games for Merriwood Conference South boys basketball teams. Newman Catholic at the Wisconsin Basketball Yearbook Classic. They have an early game against Milwaukee Juno tomorrow, and also an early one against St. Mary Catholic on Friday. We've talked about the Stratford tournament. It looks to be very, very competitive. You got Assumption participating in the Century Classic against Pacelli and Almond Bancroft in 2 of the 3 next days. You got Marathon playing that one game against Spencer tomorrow afternoon, and Edgar continuing their very busy holiday trek with games tomorrow and Friday, and then Monday at Spencer. And then, of course, the rather significant game next Tuesday as Stratford tries to get another conference win at home against Assumption. So a lot of meat to chew on when it comes to Merriwood Conference South Division boys basketball.
Well, I think one of the games, I'm going to get up and watch it because, again, we got relations on the team and I work there. So I'll check out the Newman boys. I saw some of them at the East Newman girls game last night, and they said Milwaukee Juno. I asked how that was.
They hang around you like you're somebody really important.
No,
I tell you.
They're just very, very nice, nice personable young guys that will take the time to remember that there's an old guy that needs some conversation. But Milwaukee Juneau, they said they played him in the summer, got a little chippy, so they expected that it isn't going to be an easy one no matter what the records are. So I think it's it's kind of like a little, you don't get a certificate for it. To get asked to play down there is kind of nice. So they're making the most of that. And then I think St. Mary's Catholic, and I know they're ranked. So they're going to play a very good team on Friday also. So checking those games out, I think that's a good tournament to get out and play in. Marathon went with the one route, just host Spencer. I think they would be able to handle them on Thursday, but it keeps their feet wet in the game experience, a game-like atmosphere. Edgar's going to, we'll see if we haven't had a final score, if they bounce back against Milwaukee Pulaski in the Port Washington tournament they're playing. And I like the fact that Assumption is going back to the old Catholic school conference with playing Pacelli in the Century Classic. And that's the other thing we should mention. A lot of these teams go out there. It's kind of neat to see what your team's made of playing on a college floor too, where court's a little longer, dimensions are a little different, and you get the lines are a little bit wider in every spot. So it's a cool sense to challenge yourself and see if your conditioning is where you think it is after you play a couple games on the college floor. And we've already mentioned the Stratford tournament, which will be a nice little tournament over in Stratford with the teams that they bring in.
Let's quickly turn to the girls' side in terms of some of the bigger matchups coming up over the next week. Again, the tournaments continue. Marshfield, again, hosting their event. And we did get a final score in terms of the Wausau West girls. They fell to Superior, 75-64. So Superior will take on Marshfield tomorrow. Hudson will meet Wausau West. Again, these are teams that really good matchups because they're all, Division I schools, kind of teams that I think, with the computer, it's a little different, but I used to be where those were games that you could really put a chip down in terms of seeding. Got Stevens Point again in the Century Classic. But, for Wausau West, it's been a struggle this year. It really has. They got a lot of experienced talent. It just has not seemed to click quite yet.
Well, and I think after they're playing teams that, like you said, are comparable D1. A lot of times they end up in the same playoff bracket, some of these teams, and they see each other enough. You get to play, Marshfield and West are playing the same teams. So, again, it gives you a little bit, when you're when you're scouting, it gives you realms of what you can do to combat against each other and see similarities and differences in each other's play a little bit of how that's going to work in terms of getting an advantage when you actually do play each other in the conference schedule. But I think for West, there's some inconsistencies in their play right now. At the end of the day, I think they're always going to be one of the top teams in the conference. They're going to be a formidable foe for anybody to play. But you know as well as I do with the amount of basketball you see, as well as all the coaches know, you got to be consistent to win those conference titles. And sometimes you get an extra chance in a loss you can take, and other times you have no room for mistake. And it's too early to tell how that's going to play out. But you've got to play consistent basketball, and that's what you kind of want to gain from these tournaments. Is that even though the kids are on Christmas break, they're not as active with what they're doing because they're not sitting in school. Is you want to see that when we get to these tournaments that our play replicates what we think we're able to do, and that the ball's rolling in the right direction when you get back to your conference play right after Christmas break is over.
And GNC in the Merriwood South. Again, I'm curious to see how Lakeland does. I have not found a score in their game today against Aquinas yet, but they play Waupun again tomorrow. And then the Merriwood South, they get back into the conference next Tuesday. You got Assumption at Marathon. You got Edgar at Auburndale and Stratford at Newman Catholic. And actually, that Assumption Marathon game, I know Marathon right now, you look at the record, you look at the results. Again, I was so impressed with the way they played defense when I saw them against Stratford. If they can find a little offense, I think they're going to be dangerous. I'm curious to see if they can slow down the Assumption offense at the very least.
It will be challenging. Coach Schneider's groups are known for their defense and what he gets out of them on that side of the ball. The thing that might actually also help them a little bit, even though, in the record-wise, there's a discrepancy there between the two teams, is Assumption. If what I'm reading is correct on the website we get some of our stats from, is they haven't played since December 9th due to some postponements. That's getting close to a month off almost in the middle of your basketball season, and I think they're sitting dormant over the Christmas break here. So you don't know. Team could come out fully ready, just waiting for that situation. At the same time, you could be starting over in terms of there's some sluggishness and some extra turnovers and some, mental aloof moments that you might have if you haven't played in that game experience consistently.
And real quickly before we take a break, Medford on the boys' side did defeat Brookfield Academy 81-50 in the semifinal of their tournament. In the game, Logan Baumgartner 24, Charlie Kleiss 20, Tanner Raby 19. So again, balanced attack for Medford. They will play tomorrow versus the winner of Sheboygan North and
Dr. Fuller Academy. We had to find where that one is, too.
I looked at the name. I thought, is that a misprint? No, it's Dr. Fuller, which will be played coming up momentarily. But again, real quickly, Medford looking really good. Again, we see that balance. That's fantastic.
Yeah, the three names the three young men that they do, piles of points, and even. Again, when Coach Schmidt was talking, it's you get locked down on when you're that top scorer and people come after you, and when you can have multiple guys that can do that, it makes you more dangerous because you don't know who's going to go off in that game or who's going to get loose, and those three guys are difficult guard.
Got to take a quick break. We'll come back. One more segment to go. It's the Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230. Big High School Sports Show on Bull Falls Radio, 98.9 and 1230, bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO. With Jeff Gress, I'm Chad Holmes, in the final moments of our final show of 2022. When we get together next week, it will be 2023. And once the calendar turns, and you know this as well as anybody, as being a coach for a long time, you really start getting into the conference games. When we get to January and February, we see a lot fewer non-conference games, a lot more conference games. And we're going to start to really get an idea of who the teams to beat and who the teams that jump out in the month of January.
Right. It's a total, it goes by fast. Like right now, you feel like you're just talking about what teams are getting started at Thanksgiving. And then we're waiting for them to dive into their conference play. And now all of a sudden it's like, bam, they're finishing up a bunch of their non-conference schedule. And even with the postponements, we haven't touched on that. I mean, how many games that teams are going to try to squeeze in and find a good fit and still get those games in because they were valuable. Like I'm sure Coach Schmidt, with what he talked about, he's going to want to play, or he already said it's rescheduled. He wants to play Mosinee. He wants to get that game on there because he thinks it's going to make his team better by participating in that, which I agree with him. So I don't know, so we have teams that are looking to just kind of get their consistency. We have teams that are looking to solidify themselves as the conference leaders. How about I'll dive if you wanted me to go first? Well, or do you got a question?
Well, no, I was going to say, let's start off with the boys' side. If you look at the Valley, who's going to win the conference? Who's going to win it? Who's going to ultimately take that conference? Because Marshfield right now got the early one on the road against DC Everest. So now the Evergreens are probably going to have to win in the Marshfield Fieldhouse.
Right. And I think it was a 1-2 battle kind of going into that. We thought with Marshfield and DC Everest being the top two-tiered teams in that. I just have I just think after Marshfield beat them the first time and they have kind of they have kids that play well and are consistent, but nobody always stands out. So you got a lot of different guys that can beat you, and they play they play a similar style. So I think Marshfield's putting themselves in a great spot. I think they're going to win the conference. How about you?
It's hard to go against them at this point, but it feels like Everest is doing everything they need to get ready for a good run in 2023, whether it's in the conference or whether it's in the postseason. They are testing themselves. They're probably learning their weak spots, where to get stronger when some of these big games occur. But again, the way that Marshfield is playing, for Everest to go into Marshfield and win it the second time around, it's going to be very difficult. And the thing about it is Marshfield, it's hard to see them losing to anybody else. That's also a factor in that conference. It's going to be interesting to see if a team like Stevens Point is able to come in and become a factor in that league. It looks like Spash, I think, has shown some signs. They easily beat Wausau West late in the conference. They beat, did they play Rapids yet? Was it? I'm trying to remember. No, that was Marshfield that played Rapids the first.
Right.
Yep. So, again, I think Stevens Point could be a wild card as well.
Right, I agree with you. I think, you can't. You just like you said, when you're sitting at the top of the conference, you got the target on your back. You can't stub your toe. So they're going to have to maintain the consistency. Everest definitely has the capabilities to knock them off the second time around. They have the players. They have the type of team that can do that. It just looks like Marshfield's playing some pretty consistent ball to try to argue against them right now that they won't be winning that out after the second half of the conference schedule.
Great Northern got the big three of Pines, Mosinee, and Medford. We'll find out a lot more Tuesday with that first meeting between Pines and Mosinee. Each of these teams will face off in homes. A lot still to be had. What do you think?
This was the first. If you would have told me pick a conference to go to first, this is where I was going to go with those three teams sitting at the top. I'm going to go. Medford is going to be my prediction. I think they're playing better in their non-conference schedules. I think they have a strong non-conference schedule that will battle test them. All these teams have good players and good teams, but I think they're accustomed to. Sitting in that spot. They won a ton of games the last couple of years. It was that COVID season? They were 24-1, something like that. 24. I mean, they've had some monster 20-win seasons, and I think those three guys, in Baumgartner and Kleist, I think it's Kleist, and then Raby. Sorry, they just have the potential to beat you in a lot of different ways. Again, though, conference rivalries show up, and you'll get your first taste of it to see who's going to pop out with Pines and Mosinee. But I think Medford's going to take that conference.
Pines beat Mosinee next week, or Mosinee beat Pines? Don't usually ask for predictions, but
no. And then we'll get all people will be calling. You're wrong. We're not trying to be right.
It's going to be tough for Pines against Mosinee on the road.
Yes, that was the first direction. I mean, I think both those teams are very good.
Maybe a split in the season series.
But going to Mosinee, that's a tough place to win. They play a lot of games there too, so they know that floor real well.
We got about 1:40 to go. Merriwood South, Marathon, Auburndale, Newman Catholic have beat each other up already. Everybody's lost a game at the top of the conference. You heard from Coach Schmidt. Stratford expects to be better. Edgar will always be a tough battle, and then Assumption playing much better. Who ultimately wins the Merriwood South? And you got to take your Newman hat off here.
I know. I knew that was coming. I think. I think I don't know. I just guts tell me Marathon. I just going to be a war. I hope for any one of them. They're all well coached. They're all got great players. I just think Marathon with. I know they took the one already. I think they're going to find that consistency, and they always seem to, as the season goes on, they just become a very strong team. And I think that's going to continue to hold them through that. They're just going to get tougher as the season goes on and ultimately play the most consistent.
And the thing is, each of them has one game against each other at home, one game on the road. So there's really no advantage. Nobody has won on the opposition's home court.
You got to toss the team out quick before we go. You would be...
I don't know.
See, that's what I could have done, and I didn't. I went with a team, and maybe take my hat off.
I mean, Marathon taking Newman to OT at Newman was, I thought, impressive. I thought that was impressive. I think it's going to be tough. I think Marathon has the capability of going into Auburndale and winning.
I think they're going to play a chip on their shoulder because of that game.
Yep, absolutely. We have to wrap it up here. We'll come back next Wednesday, have our first show of 2023. He's Jeff Gress. I'm Chad Holmes. Thanks again for joining us for the Big High School Sports Show on WXCO.